Okay, guys, last video for Act 4, we're going to get through Scene 6 and through Scene 7. So, let's do this. Alright, so we are in another room in the castle, so this is another court scene. And Horatio and his servant are on stage. And Horatio goes, "What are they that would speak with me?" And so, "Who's here who wants to speak to me?" And the servant says, "Sailors, sir. They say they have letters for you." And Horatio's like, "Well, let them come in." And the servant leaves. And then Horatio says, "I do not know from what part of the world I should be greeted if not from Lord Hamlet." So he's like, I don't think I would be getting a letter from anybody unless it was Hamlet. So then the sailors enter, and the sailor says, "God bless you, sir." And then Horatio says, "Let him bless thee too." And then he says, "He new word, he shall, sir, an't please him, there's a letter for you. Sir, it comes from the ambassador that was bound for England, if your name be Horatio, as I am let to know it is." So then Horatio opens the letter, and he begins to read it. And it says, "Horatio, when thou shalt have overlooked this, give these fellows some means to the king. They have letters for him. Ere we were 2 days old at sea, a pirate of very warlike appointment gave us chase." So he tells Horatio, first, once you begin reading this letter, tell the men that I sent in to go to the king, because he sent 2 letters, one for the king and one for Horatio. So send those guys with the king's letter, and you read this one. And then he begins his tale that they were attacked by pirates. That's exciting. On their way to England. So the pirates attacked their little ship that had Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and Hamlet on it. And he says, "Finding ourselves too slow of sail, we put on a compelled valor, and in the grapple I boarded them." So like they were fighting, and Hamlet boarded the pirates. And it says, "On the instant they got clear of our ship, so I alone became their prisoner. They have dealt with me like thieves of mercy, but they knew what they did. I am to do a good turn for them." So they knew who he was. They knew that they had done something for Denmark, and so he's like, "I'm gonna owe these guys." So he said, "Let the king have the letters I have sent." So the letter that the servants are taking to the king now. And he says, "And repair thou to me with as much haste as thou would fliest to death. I have words to speak in thine ear, will make thee dumb." So he's going to astound him with the news. And he says, when he says dumb, it's like astound, but also it will leave you speechless. He says, "Yet are they much too light for the bore of the matter. These good fellows will bring thee where I am. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern hold their course for England. Of them I have much to tell thee. Farewell. He that thou knowest, thine Hamlet." And then Horatio says, "Come, I will give you way for these your letters, and do the speedier that you may direct me to him from whom you brought them." So he's like, "All right, go take the letters, or after you take the letters, then take me to Hamlet, because they're supposed to then take Horatio to Hamlet." And then everybody exits. And then we have Act 4, Scene 7. And this is another room in the castle, and this is the king and Laertes, and they're about to plot. Plot, how they're going to get Hamlet. So, the king begins, "Now must your conscience my acquitted seal, and you must put me in your heart for friend. Sith have you heard, and with a knowing ear, that he which hath your noble father slain pursued my life." So the king's like, "Look, we need to team up, because the man who killed your father also has attempted to kill me." And Laertes goes, "It well appears. But tell me why you proceed not against these feats, so crimeful and so capital in nature, as by your safety, wisdom, all things else, you mainly were stirred up." So Laertes is really smart here, because he's like, why didn't you just take care of this guy yourself? Why do you need me? And the king's about to say, he says, "For 2 special reasons, which may to you perhaps seem much unsinewed, but yet to me they are strong. The queen, his mother, lives almost by his looks." So the queen adores him. "And for myself, my virtue or my plague, be it either which, she's so conjunctive to my life and soul, that as the star moves not but in his sphere, I could not but by her." So right here, Claudius lets us know that he is smitten kitten with Gertrude. He's in love with her, and he's probably been in love with her even when she was married to his brother Hamlet. So we see here that it definitely wasn't just ambition that drove Claudius to marry Gertrude. He truly loved her. And so he continues, the other motive why to a public count I might not go is the great love the general gender bear him, who dipping all his faults in their affection would like the spring that turneth wood to stone, convert his gyves to graces. So he's basically telling us that Hamlet is so beloved in Denmark that even if Claudius was like, Hamlet made an attempt on my life, Denmark loves him so much, they'd be like, no, that's probably not what would happen, and they would alter that bit of truth, even though it's that they would alter it to where it would be against Claudius and not Hamlet because he's so beloved. So he says, so that my arrows too slightly timbered for so loud a wind would have reverted to my bow again, so it would have come back to him. If he would have tried to shoot an arrow, it just would have came back, kind of like a boomerang. And he says, and not where I had aimed them. And Laertes goes, and so have I a noble father lost, a sister driven into desperate terms, whose worth, if praises may go back again, stood challenger on mount of all the age for her perfections. But my revenge will come. So he talks about how wonderful and beautiful and virtuous Ophelia was. And then the king says, break not your sleeps for that. You must not think that we are made of stuff so flat and dull, that we can let our beard be shook with danger and think it pastime. You shortly shall hear more. I loved your father, and we love ourselves, and that I hope will teach you to imagine. And at this point a messenger comes in and kind of interrupts their discussion. And he's like, how now? What's news? So what do you want? And the messenger says, letters, my lord, from Hamlet, this to your majesty, this to the queen. And the king, of course, is like totally taken aback because he sent Hamlet to England to get choppy, right? So he's like, why is Hamlet writing me letters from beyond? Because he's supposed to be dead. And so the king goes, from Hamlet, who brought them? And the messenger says, sailors, my lord, they say I saw them not. They were given me by Claudio. He received them of him that brought them. And so the king's like, Laertes, you shall hear them. Leave us. So he's like, Laertes, listen to these letters. The messenger leaves, and then he reads, high and mighty, you shall know I am set naked on your kingdom. Tomorrow shall I beg leave to see your kingly eyes, when I shall first, asking your pardon thereunto, recount the occasion of my sudden and more strange return to Hamlet. So Hamlet tells him straight off the bat, the first thing I'm going to do is beg forgiveness, because I feel terrible about all the things I've done. And then Claudius is like, what should this mean? Are all the rest come back? Or is it some abuse and no such thing? So Claudius is like, what is happening? This doesn't make sense. This shouldn't be occurring. And Laertes goes, know you the hand, which means, are you sure it is written by Hamlet? Is that Hamlet's handwriting? And the king says, 'tis Hamlet's character, naked. And in postscript here, he says, alone can you advise me? Because he's supposed to be with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. So the king's like, why is he alone? Why aren't they with him? And then Laertes goes, I am lost in it, my lord, which means I have no idea. He says, but let him come. It warms the very sickness in my heart that I shall live and tell him to his teeth that thus didst thou. So Laertes is pumped because he gets to look Hamlet face to face and go, you killed my father, now I kill you. And the king says, if it be so, Laertes, as how should it be so, how otherwise will you be ruled by me? So Claudius here is like, okay, yeah, revenge is great, but I want you to listen to me because I have an idea. And I'm your king, so let me just put this forth. And so Laertes is like, hey, my lord, so you will not o'errule me to a peace. He's like, I will listen. Laertes says, I will listen to whatever you say, as long as you tell me that I do not have to not seek revenge. As long as I can still kill him, I will do whatever you want. And the king says, to thine own peace, if he be now returned, as checking at his voyage, and that he means no more to undertake it, I will work him to exploit. Now ripen my device, under the which he shall not choose, but fall. And for his death no wind shall breathe, but even his mother shall uncharge the practice, and call it accident. So Claudius is like, we're still going to kill him, but we're going to make it look like an accident. That way you're faultless and I'm faultless, and Gertrude is, she doesn't feel like I've done anything wrong. And Laertes says, my lord, I will be ruled, which I will listen to what you want. And he says, the rather if you could devise it so that I might be the organ. So he's like, yeah, that's fine, but I want to do the killing. I want to do the killing. And Claudius says it falls right, which, yes, okay, that will happen. It says, you have been talked of since your travel much, and that in Hamlet's hearing, for a quality wherein they say you shine, your sum of parts, did not together pluck such envy from him, as did that one, and that in my regard of the unworthiest siege. Now, the king is talking here about the fact that Hamlet has heard people talking about how awesome Laertes is. And the king has noticed that it makes Hamlet really, really jealous. And so the king is like, let's use this against him. And Laertes goes, what part is that, my lord? And Laertes is like, what? Why would he be jealous of me? What is my part in that talk? And the king's going to explain to him where this jealousy came from. And he says, it very riband in the cap of youth, yet needful too, for youth no less becomes the light and careless livery that it wears, than settled age his sable and his weeds importing health and graveness. 2 months since, here was a gentleman of Normandy. So an individual, a young youth in his prime, he comes from Normandy. And he says, I've seen myself and served against the French, and they can well on horseback. But this gallant had witchcraft in it. He grew unto his seat, and to such wondrous doing brought his horse, as he had been encorpsed and demi-natured. With the brave beast, so far he topped my thoughts, that I, in forgery of shapes and tricks, come short of what he did. So basically, he's like, this dude came from Normandy. He did all these amazing horse tricks, like he was born on the back of that horse. And we were all like, what is happening? This guy is the bomb. He is awesome. And Claudius is like, it was like witchcraft. It was so crazy awesome. And Laertes is like, a Norman, was it? Was he Norman? And the king goes, yeah, he was Norman. And then Laertes goes, upon my life, Lamond. You know, that guy Lamond, the horseback guy, he's great. So we have a name for the guy. His name is Lamond. Evidently, Laertes knows him. And the king's like, that's him, the very same. And Laertes says, I know him well. He is the brooch indeed, and gem of all the nation. And then the king goes, ooh, Laertes, he made confession of you, which means he was talking about you, and gave you such a masterly report for art and exercise in your defense, and for your rapier, which is the sword, most especially, that he cried out, 'twould be a sight indeed if one could match you. So, like, this awesome guy Lamond, who's so BA on horseback, is like, man, that Laertes is really good. So it means something that Laertes was spoken of by this man. And he said he's great on horseback, he's great with a sword, that he cried out, 'twould be a sight indeed, if one could match you. The scribers of their nation, he swore, had neither motion, guard, nor eye if you opposed them. Sir, this report of his did Hamlet so envenom with his envy, that he could do nothing but wish and beg your sudden coming o'er to play with him. Now, out of this. So Hamlet heard this, and he was like, what? Laertes isn't so bad. I can beat Laertes. Bring him in here. Bring him in here. I'm going to beat him. So that's what occurred. And so Laertes is like, well, what out of this? How are we going to work this? And the king goes, Laertes, was your father dear to you? Or are you like the painting of a sorrow, a face without a heart? And Laertes is like, why would you ask me if I loved my father? This is awful. And the king's like, no, not that I think you did not love your father, but that I know love is begun by time. So he's like, I know that things have a time period. And he says, and that I see in passages of proof, time qualifies the spark and fire of it. There lives within the very flame of love a kind of wick or snuff that will abate it, and nothing is at a like goodness still. For goodness, growing to a pleurisy, dies in his own too much. What would do? We should do when we would. For this would changes, and hath abatements and delays as many as there are tongues, our hands, our accidents, and then this should is like a spendthrift sigh that hurts by easing. But to the quick of the ulcer, Hamlet comes back. But would you undertake to show yourself your father's son indeed more than in words? So this is a long passage, but basically what he's saying is I'm not asking you if you love your father, but what I'm trying to explain to you is that love is like, at first it burns hot, like a hot fire, like a hot candle. He said, but as time it abates and it lessens and it declines, not that it lessens or declines, but it changes and it becomes more tempered. And Claudius here is trying to associate Laertes' rage and his bloodthirst to kill Hamlet. He's like, we need to enact this quick, because much like love, revenge, or hate also dissipates or changes in time. And he's like, and we need to do this now. We cannot wait. And he says that we need to get on this. And then he's like, are you ready to act? The minute he comes in, are you ready to go? Is it go time, Laertes? And Laertes is like, I'll cut his throat in church. I'll do it now. I don't care. Bring him. Alright, so Laertes is ready. And the king's like, no place indeed should murder sanctuarize. Revenge should have no bounds. So the king is like whipping him up into a frenzy. And he says, but good Laertes, will you do this? Keep close within your chamber. Hamlet returned shall know you are come home. Will put on those shall praise your excellence and set a double varnish on the fame. So he said, Laertes, go to your room. Don't see Hamlet yet. And we're going to start talking about the castle, about, ooh, Laertes is back. Ooh, remember how good Laertes is with the sword. Ooh, Laertes is so great with a horse. And Hamlet's going to be like, I'm good with a horse too. I can stab stuff with swords. So we're going to like get him all jealous and mad. And so he says, the Frenchman gave you, bring you and find together and wager on your heads. So they're going to bet who can beat who. And he says, he being remiss, most generous and free from all contriving, will not peruse the foils. So he's like, Hamlet's going to be so ready to battle that he's not going to look at the swords. Foils and rapiers. Those guys are swords. So he's like, he'll be so ready to like get in there and try to beat you because he's so jealous that he won't even check the foils. So that with ease or with a little shuffling, you may choose a sword unbaited. Unbaited, generally when they would have like, I don't know what you call them, like sword battles. I don't know. They would like, it's not a duel because they're not going to kill each other. But like when they would have like fake little sword fights, they would put little buttons on the stabby part of the sword so nobody, got stabbed. But so when unbaited, it means the little button's gone, the little bit that keeps the sharp point from, cutting you. And so he says that you will get a unbaited sword, and then you will requite him. You will kill him for your father. And Laertes is like, I will do it. And for that purpose, I'll anoint my sword. So it's not enough for Laertes that his sword is going to be sharp and stabby, but he's also going to anoint his sword, which means he's going to poison it. So he's like, yeah, I'll do you one better. I'm going to poison it. And he says, I bought an unction of Montblanc. So like an unction is like a portion, and Montblanc is the poison. And he says, so mortal that, but dip a knife in it, where it draws blood, no cataplasm so rare, collected from all simples that of virtue, under the moon, can save the thing from death. This is but scratched withal. I'll touch my point with the contagion, that if I gall him slightly, it may be death. Laertes is hardcore, and the king goes, let's further think of this. Weigh what convenience both of time and means may fit us to our shape. If this should fail, and that our drift look through our bad performance, 'twere better not essayed. Therefore this project should have a back or a second, that might hold if this did blast and prove. So the king's like, that's great. We have a backup plan. We should have another backup plan. He was like, we need 2 backup plans for this, because this is serious business. So he says, soft, let me see. We'll make a solemn wager on your cunning hat, and when you're in motion, and you're hot and dry, as make your bouts more violence to the end, and he calls for a drink, I'll have him prepared him a chalice for the nonce, whereupon but sipping, if he by chance escape your venom stop, our purpose may hold there. So he's going to make a little poisoned cup of wine, and he's going to be like, okay, well, if you don't stab him, and the poison doesn't get him, then we'll have him drink some poison. And then the queen comes in as they're plotting, and Claudius is like, oh, how now, queen? Me and the Laertes are just chilling. We're not plotting your son's death. Nope, not us. And the queen goes, And also the queen is beside herself. She comes, oh no. And he's like, what's wrong? And she's like, one woe doth tread upon another hills. So fast they follow. Your sister's drowned, Laertes. Now, she just drops that news. She doesn't even try to soften the blow. She's like, bam, she's dead. And Laertes is like, drowned. Oh, where? And the queen goes, there's a willow grass aslant a brook that shows his hoar leaves in the glassy stream. There with fantastic garlands did she come, of crowflowers, nettles, daisies, and long purples that liberal shepherds give a grosser name. So she comes to the bank. Evidently somebody saw her. Somebody saw her approach the bank with all these flowers and flowers in her hair, and she's just, a hot mess. And they watch her, and it says, but our cold maids do dead men's fingers call them. There on the pendant bows her coronet weaves, clamoring to hang on an envious sliver broke, when her weedy trophies and herself fell in the weeping brook. Now, we have here that she fell in the weeping brook, but at the time, fell could mean, she threw herself, more so. And it said, her clothes spread wide and mermaid-like, a while they bore her up. So she fell in, and her clothes, they caught air, so she's floating for a little while. She's like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, floating down the river. And she starts singing, which time she chanted snatches of old tunes. So this dude who's watching her, hey, don't bother helping her. That's cool, just watch. So she's floating down, singing songs to herself, la 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 la. And then it says, as one incapable of our own distress, or like a creature native and endued, unto that element, but long it could not be, till that her garments, heavy with their drinks, and become, pulled down by the river, by the water, pulled the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death. And Laertes is like, alas, then she is drowned. And the queen's like, drowned, drowned. And Laertes knows, too much of water hast thou, poor Ophelia, and therefore I forbid my tears. So when he says too much of water, of course he means she drowned in the river and had too much water, but also she had cried so many tears in her last few months of life, or weeks, probably not much weeks, and maybe months, I don't know. But she has just too much water, too much, and Laertes is like, I will spare you any more. And he's like, I will not cry. It is our trick, nature, her customs hold. Let shame say what it will, when these are gone, the woman will be out. Adieu, my lord, I have speech of fire that fain would blaze, but that this foully doubts it. So he's like, I have been so bloodthirsty and full of revenge and hate and anger, but this has taken me to a level of sadness, and I want to be alone. And so he exits. So, poor Ophelia, alas, she's drowned. And then the king looks at his queen, and he's like, let's follow Gertrude. How much I had to do to calm his rage. Now fear I this will give it start again. Therefore, let's follow. So he's like, I calmed him down, but now I'm sure this is going to, after he stops being sad, he's going to get really, really angry. So let's follow him and see what happens. All right, we did it. We got through Act 4. So we only have Act 5 left. So, yeah. I hope that helped. All right.